Hey guys, it's Dennis here with Revog Games. I'm joined by.
Joshua Weyers, all the way in South Africa,
Yeah,
experiencing a bit of lag right now. I hope it's all right.
yeah, I hear you fine. So we're here to talk about another big news. I mean, we just talked about a huge acquisition by Microsoft a week or so ago of Activision slash Blizzard and all the fallout from that and how that's going to impact. And we talked about Sony. What is Sony going to do? Well, apparently, Sony has bought Bungie, developer and creator of Halo and Destiny. But hearing this, at first, this big news of Sony buying them, you're thinking, okay, this is a retaliation slash in response to the Activision Blizzard thing. But if you think about it, and from what they said, it's like this deal has been in the works for 5 or 6 months. On Sony's side, I will say I do think the announcement of Activision Blizzard probably sped up their process. They probably were in discussions, and then as soon as the Activision Blizzard stuff hit for Microsoft, they're like, okay, we might as
Considering
well.
their stock prices, they had to. I think they
Yeah.
had to make an announcement soon because of their stocks going down. You know,
Mhm.
um,
And they had to make some concessions too. I don't know if they originally were or going to or not, but at first I thought, oh man, that's crazy. They bought Bungie. Destiny, it's going to be exclusive to Sony and their new IP is going to be. But if you actually read all the details and the Q&As and the interviews with both Sony and Bungie, it sounds like Sony owns them, but actually isn't really going to do or can't really. The way that the deal is structured, it sounds like Bungie is going to be independent and they're still going to be multi-platform and they can publish to whoever they want. So they can go PC, Xbox, PlayStation, or whatever. So it's, I guess, not quite the deal that we thought it, at least what it
yeah,
appeared from the
it's not
outside.
what it's not what I was expecting. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like this was. It seems like they acquired Bungie. Look, there's a possibility of them. They could still make exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that Bungie won't be focusing on exclusives.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, also look, Destiny 2. Destiny 2 is a great game, but at a certain point in time, they're going to make Destiny 3, and when they do make Destiny 3, that will be cross-platform. It will have cross-saving. It'll probably be free to play because that's what Destiny 2 is right now, and free
Yeah.
to play seems to be working for them. However, you got to pay for the expansions, which I think is a great way to get people involved in your game. You got a great base game. You want more? Pay for the expansions. Base game is free. Great way to get new players in. So, I mean, yeah, they're going to be an independent company for the most part. But what happens here is PlayStation now has access to their engines essentially and their
Mm-hmm.
tools, their proprietary tools.
Mm-hmm.
So PlayStation now has access to Bungie's proprietary tools, and they can use that on other PlayStation Studio games. So I think that's not their main reason, but I think that's we're gonna see more of that rather than exclusivity. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think in the future it's gonna be a thing where like Bungie games will still be cross-platform, but much like Game Pass, it'll probably be on PlayStation subscription service for free, where it's like you can buy it on any console, you can buy it on any
Mm-hmm.
platform, but the game's free on their subscription service. Like I can see that's probably what they're gonna do because uh,
You're
that's like
talking
a
about
smart
future
like
IP, right?
not just future IP, but even old IP. You know what I mean? That they could be bringing back or whatever. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
probably gonna keep it multi-platform to make the
Mm-hmm.
money. But I have a feeling it'll be like for instance like Game Pass. There are games that are on Game Pass that you can get on every platform. You can
Yes.
get it on every platform, but it's included in Game Pass. So rather than buying the game, you can just get Game Pass and play the game. And I think PlayStation's going to do the same with their subscription service, where it's like you can like the Bungie games will be there,
Mm-hmm.
but you can still buy it on your Xbox, you can still buy it on your PC. But hey, if you have PS Plus or whatever the service is going to be, it's already included. I see them doing that. Like that's a no-brainer. They're definitely going to do that, I think. Um, Future IPs, I think. I mean, they say that the company is going to be independent. I think that they'll have future IPs coming out of the company in terms of like I said, their tools, their engines, things like that they'll have access to. Um, but in terms of like news, like it's big news, and I'm glad Sony did this, but it's obviously nowhere near as big of a deal as the $70 billion deal that is currently going through with Microsoft. and that's a lot of IPs, a lot of old IP that they can bring back to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that was a big acquisition. This, I think, I have a feel, if PlayStation's smart, this is the first of many acquisitions. However, it's
Yes.
PlayStation now kind of, they're in the position where it's like we're gonna buy whatever's left, because to be honest, Microsoft's taken all the big top dogs, and the other top dogs got even bigger. Like Take-Two got bigger because they acquired Zynga. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft acquiring Acti Blizzard. Um, Sony's here acquiring Bungie. I think there's gonna be other acquisitions too. The I don't want to say that this is like a petty move by PlayStation,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that the reason why they focused on this more was kind of like they're taking a stab at Microsoft. They can't not. Like, look, Microsoft literally took two of Sony's mascots. They took Spyro and they took Crash
Crash
Bandicoot.
Bandicoot, yeah.
And those Crash Bandicoot was literally the mascot of PlayStation in the early 2000s,
Yes.
late 90s. Like, he was the mascot. And now Microsoft owns their mascot. So I feel like PlayStation, even though it wasn't their main intention, it definitely was one of the intentions to be like, hey, you know what? We're gonna take Bungie from you guys, the guys that made your main game Halo. We're gonna take that away from you.
The only difference is they don't own Halo anymore. When Bungie split off from Microsoft, they basically had to leave behind Halo. So Halo was, I think that was probably part of the deal of them being independent again, because Microsoft did own Bungie, and whatever deal they had, they were able to break off and become independent again, but they were leaving Halo, the IP, behind. And then obviously they created Destiny, which is another, their second biggest IP that they created. But I guess the thing is like, how much does this benefit Sony if, okay, for example, you're talking about Destiny as a games as a service. It's basically free to play. Obviously, there are the expansion packs you have to pay for, but that doesn't really benefit them as much in the one. Much like I think Call of Duty Warzone will be on all platforms, because it's a free to play game. There's no point in limiting a free to play game. How much can it really help them? Because if you have a free-to-play game, or okay, maybe the expansions are free on their game service, that's not as big as having, for example, Halo campaign on Game Pass. So Halo Infinite, the multiplayer is free. Though it is not on PlayStation, but it's on PC and Xbox. But the Halo campaign part is only on. You can either purchase it for $60 or get Game Pass and play it. So that's a benefit or a way to sell Game Pass. I don't see how Destiny 2 is a free-to-play game, even with the expansion packs being free on whatever Sony's new remodeled their subscription service, how that's going to help benefit them.
This is
much.
I think this is a long-term thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
Short term, this means nothing. Like, it literally means nothing to them short term. Unlike the Microsoft Acti Blizzard acquisition, that is immediate IP coming to their Game Pass. You know what I mean? So that, like, well, not immediate, but eventually it will. You know what I mean? So that's a short-term thing and long-term investment, both. With this is a long-term investment for Sony. And I mean unless Bungie has been working on some like huge AAA game in the background without us knowing, this is going to be a long-term play for them. And it seems more about like just trying to get studios. It seems like this acquisition doesn't seem like a big move for them. It was more just like, from my point of view, it more looks like, and this has been going on for a while. This didn't just happen overnight. This has been in the process for, I think, at least 6 months or more.
Yeah.
I believe it's a situation of Sony just trying their best to get some studios, because they don't want to fall behind Xbox, which they currently are. In terms of IP and how many well, maybe I'm not too sure. Sony might have more studios, but they could be smaller studios. You know what I mean?
Well,
not as much IP.
Well, after the whole Activision Blizzard thing happened with Microsoft, Square Enix was trending because people were like clamoring for Sony to buy Square Enix.
That would make sense. That would make sense for me, because they're
tied together.
They're so close, and they're in the same country, which makes the acquisition a much easier process as well.
Yeah,
Like
so
it's always difficult when it comes to international acquisitions. That's always really tricky, because it's like the government tends to get involved. Um, so it would have been a no-brainer for me. But
the
yeah,
thing is,
yeah,
there's
big
not
news.
there's what
Yeah,
EA is left, Capcom is left, Take
and EA is already
Two.
technically tied to Xbox. Like they're not tied, but
Yeah,
if you get
yeah,
Game Pass Ultimate, you get EA Play.
yeah, yeah.
So like
Well, it
they've
seems
like
like
essentially put the two together, which is
well, it
smart.
seems like EA and Ubisoft seem to have closer ties to Microsoft currently,
Mm.
and Sony has closer ties to Square Enix and probably Capcom as well. Um,
They also have closer ties to Epic,
mhm,
which I don't know if that means much, but it could mean more in the future.
yeah.
Um,
So they did report that Bungie is working on new IP, but
okay.
the way that they're saying is it still will be multi-platform. Like it's
Yeah.
still. So that's what I'm trying to see. Like, where's the benefit? A lot of people are reporting Sony's benefit is actually gaining access and knowledge about the way that Bungie handles the the games as a service slash community, online multiplayer, whole thing. You know what I mean? That's kind of like where they're benefiting from purchasing Bungie, is getting access to that type of information and strategy and all that stuff versus actual. It's not like when they bought like some of the other companies to like be like, okay, you're making only games exclusive for Sony.
Yeah. Look, I think I said it last time as well, but yeah, they're just gonna do what look, Mike, I know they haven't said it yet, and I don't really know what they're gonna do, but I'm pretty sure that moving forward, Call of Duty is like, well, we know the next three games. The next three games have to be multi-platform.
Yeah.
They have to because their contracts in place for the next three games, which is also insane because that just goes to show how quick they have to push these games out. If they already got contracts spanning three games ahead,
Mhm.
like then they're only spending like a year at a time on these games, which is kind of disappointing.
Less,
But
probably less
yeah,
than a year.
probably less. Yeah, like 8 months tops. It's disappointing, but anyways, I'm pretty sure moving forward, it's going to be like what Microsoft will be doing is all the Call of Duty games will be on Game Pass for free, but you
Mhm.
can still buy them on PlayStation. You can still
Mhm.
buy them on Steam or Epic or wherever
Yes.
you're getting them. You know what I mean? Um,
But I feel
which I think for
because I feel like
yeah,
though Call of Duty is probably the only IP from the Activision Blizzard that they're gonna keep like that. Well, I guess Overwatch will be
yeah, Overwatch. If there's like
multi-platform.
they'll make more money if it's multi-platform with
Yeah,
that because of how big that game is and how big the esports is and
yeah, yeah.
like they'll yeah but yeah moving forward like in terms of just the deal we're talking about right now, the Sony Bungie deal, it's big news. I don't think it's as big as people are like letting it off to be.
Also when you first hear it, right? When I first heard Sony buys Bungie, I was like, oh my god, Destiny,
You're like
blah blah
yeah,
blah. And then
I just thought
after
of
I
drama. I was like, ooh, the drama, the tea, because it is like, I mean, that's like
yeah,
hooking up with your best friend's ex-girlfriend. You know what I
yes,
mean? Like, there's a
yeah,
bit of drama there. Like, I
yeah,
thought it was feisty,
yeah.
but yeah,
But then after reading the details, I'm like, okay, it's not
doesn't
as
mean too much for them. Yeah,
yeah,
at least not now. Like 2-3 years from now, who knows? You know what I mean? But currently, in terms of like short term, this means very little for them. Well, it could do well for their stock prices. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
But
I
I,
think stock market wise, they might get an improvement from just this announcement on its
yeah.
own.
But what
It's
about the
it's
positioning
publicity as
though?
well.
But what about positioning though, in terms of
Mm.
if it is this uh, IP battle basically between the two companies, like who, you know what they're kind of doing? They're doing what Nintendo is doing, except for taking it a further step. So Nintendo has survived all these years by basically having these exclusive titles that are beloved by the community,
Mm-hmm.
but they took it a step further by purchasing other studios to get these exclusives so that they have more. Like, right, Nintendo, you have a few of them, right? But you don't have a ton. So you love
Yeah.
those type of games, you have to buy a Nintendo. Back in the day, the exclusives for, Sony and Xbox in the early days there were some but they were very, it was like Halo, it was like Crash Bandicoot.
You mean Microsoft? I was gonna say, yeah. For the longest time, Final Fantasy was exclusive to Sony, which like I remember like that was a big deal. Like I think it was Final Fantasy 15 that went multi-platform.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, I could be wrong, but I think that was the first time they went multi-platform. But for the longest time, they were Sony exclusive.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how the contract is written out with Bungie, because Bungie is very, like, their number one priority is being independent. That's why they like left Microsoft. And then I feel like if they were to get in a deal, which they did with another company, whether it was Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, whoever, that they would have something in the contract that really states like, we are doing our thing. You own us and you have access to all our stuff, and we'll never. I almost feel like this is like a move by Sony where it's not a full on, okay, they got the whole company and they're exclusive to us, but like a blocking move, right? Like, okay, we're gonna do this, so Microsoft, you can't acquire them. You know what I mean? Like, here we go. We're buying Bungie, and even though they're still gonna be multi-platform and they're gonna be independent, we're preventing you, Microsoft, from getting them as an exclusive developer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Versus like almost like like an aggressive move, which Microsoft has been doing with their Activision Blizzard, which by the way is now going to be not investigated but be overseen by the FTC instead of the DOJ. In terms of the acquisition,
of the workplace issues, or
I don't think so. I think this is more about the to delve into that, the acquisition versus. People are saying, hey, is it monopolistic? But it's like I mentioned before, like, how can you be monopolistic if you are the third? If you're the third,
if you're the third one, exactly. If you're the third,
what is it?
Really not.
Isn't it? I forgot. What was it? Is it Take-Two Zynga's like number one or something like that? Number two is Sony.
Yeah.
Number three is Microsoft. So it's like, I don't know how.
I mean, it would be a monopoly. It would only be they would only have a monopoly if the games that you're playing, like the games that they acquired, if they were only on Game Pass and nothing else, that would be a monopoly. But most of these games are everywhere else. Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know, it's weird because the whole Halo thing, but then it's like, wouldn't like Halo have counted as a monopoly? Like, you have the monopoly on Halo. Well, you can't have a monopoly on Halo. It's one game,
Yeah, it's about the marketplace. Like, how much of the marketplace? Yeah. I know it's hard to say that. Hard to convince someone, say, Xbox is a monopoly if, one, their console sales are less than Sony's, their revenue is less than Sony's. Like, that's not really, Well,
look, digital media is still fairly new, even though most people, like hell, a lot of Gen Z, they were born into it. But new media and digital media is still fairly new. Like, when I think of movies, there was God, I'm so bad on this. Paramount, was it the state of, I forgot what state it was. Georgia? Could be wrong. Anyways, the state against Paramount in like 1940 something, and it was about a monopoly. Eventually they ruled to the point where movie studios cannot own movie theaters. It is illegal. That is a monopoly. You cannot produce a movie and then distribute it as well. Like, there had to be a separation there. And they decided that back in the 40s already. And now they're coming back to the law, looking at it going, well, hold on, doesn't Netflix, don't they produce their own movies and then you can only watch them on Netflix? You know what I mean? But they're also realizing that it's like, when it comes to digital things, there's not really a monopoly. I don't know, it's weird. You know what I mean? Because for the longest time, for like years, like even before this, like for the past 20 years, it's like Microsoft has their own games that they produce, and then they put it on their own system, and you can only play it on their system. But they were never in trouble for that, because it's like, it's just something that made sense.
It's all about marketplace. It's all about market share. Look, this is the thing: is Microsoft, Xbox could be a monopoly in the future. Let's say with this Activision Blizzard acquisition, obviously we know about Bethesda, and then there are all the other ones that before. Let's say they get to a place where Game Pass is like the number one. I mean, it already is the number one game subscription service, but it gets to the point where like 90% of all gamers are subscribed to Game Pass. And let's say Sony only has 10% of the market. And then
Yeah.
every time there's a new IP that neither Sony or Microsoft own, like an independent studio creates, and then Microsoft comes and gobbles them up, then that would be considered more of a monopoly. It's just I
Yeah.
don't
I
think
mean, I
they're
feel
in.
like Disney. I feel like Disney has a monopoly. Well, people have been saying it for years, but Disney. I don't know how like Disney's getting away with like their. Well, even just with Disney Plus as well. It's very monopolistic.
Yeah, but the thing is there. I think in a way Netflix invalidates the monopoly. I think Disney was
True.
kind of in that place where okay, they merged with Fox. They own like all of Star Wars. They own all of Marvel. They don't own DC. Maybe if they bought DC, but remember their services. If I'm not, I don't remember the exact rate, but they're like number 3 or 4. I'm trying to think. I think number 1 is obviously Netflix, and then number 2, I don't know if it's Hulu or maybe it's HBO Max. I can't remember. And I think Disney Plus is like 3rd or 4th in that hierarchy of subscription services. So, anyways, really, remember when Microsoft had like the antitrust kind of investigations into them? Remember, Microsoft at that point was like 90-something% of the marketplace, 90+% of all desktops were, Microsoft had their OS on it, and they were doing stuff that were like considered monopolistic moves because they were using their giant one, resources, and then 2, their place in the market to basically kill competition, kill innovation. The problem is that it's so hard to say that nowadays because there's so many different things now. Like you're talking about Google, you're talking about Amazon, you're talking about Sony, you're talking about Microsoft, you're talking about all these different entities, and so far, I mean, there really isn't. Can you name one company that really dominates all of tech? Like, it's not like that anymore.
Alphabet and Tencent.
But I mean, you're still
but
doing
get,
like.
There's a lot of gray areas. That's why I don't think anybody's ever going to get caught. Like even like you said, even though the acquisition's getting looked at, nothing's going to come out of it. I think it's a clean acquisition. It's just going to take a while. But moving back to like the Bungie Sony news, I don't think there's anything. Like we're not going to see anything come out of this. Like we're just not. Like I mean, like Sony will benefit, but it's not going to be in a way that the public will see it. Like I said, I think this was more of an acquisition of their tools and like their developers. You know what I mean? I think it was less about IP and more about getting good developers and having good resources. You know. Like that's that's what makes the most sense to me is like especially because look, they said it's going to be a multi-platform thing. They'll be getting their profit. They'll be getting profit from the Bungie games, but they're not going to be getting exclusives from it. You know what I mean? So, and it does seem like, and they did mention the fact that they're after the proprietary tools. So I think it's going to be more about that and incorporating that into other games. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to come out of the future from Sony. Not from Bungie, but from Sony being able to use Bungie's resources. Very small deal though. Like I said, it's one of those like things where it's like almost clickbait. It's not clickbait, but like you read you hear the news and you're like, oh my god, what? I gotta hear about this. And then it's like, in retrospect, unless we're missing something here, nothing really big is happening here. Destiny 2 isn't changing it anyway. The new expansion to Destiny 2 is coming out. It's still going to be on every platform. There's not going to be any exclusive deals. There's not going to be like in-game items you get if you're PlayStation, like it's all literally staying exactly the same. The only thing is Sony now has a cut of that pie with microtransactions and all that, you know what I mean?
On a side note, all of this with the Activision Blizzard, with this recent Bungie acquisition, it makes me think that Microsoft got a great deal on Bethesda.
Oh yeah. On
That
ZeniMax, hell
that
yeah.
was what 7.6. I can't remember the exact figure, but it was around $7 billion. Sorry.
Crazy that they were valued less than Bungie.
Well, I mean that's more than Bungie, but the thing
My bad.
but the amount of IP that you're buying and the amount of games and developer
It's way
studio.
more, yeah.
Remember, Bungie is one studio with essentially. I mean, yes, they have some stuff in the past, but what they actually own is one big IP, right? Destiny. Sure, they're going to make some more in the future, and they made a huge one in Halo before, but that is now owned by Microsoft. So you're basically buying one big studio with one big game. $3.6 billion. That's a lot of money. You're talking, and then when you talk about ZeniMax, and you're talking about like Fallout and Skyrim / Elder Scrolls. You're talking about a new property with Starfield. You're talking about Wolfenstein. You're talking about Doom. You're talking, you know what I mean?
A lot of old property too.
A lot
like,
of yeah.
stuff that they could bring back if they wanted to.
Yeah. So that acquisition, while big at the time, just looks like a great deal now, like a steal. So
it does, man. It's just Sony's got to make some more acquisitions. I don't know if anybody's bought Warner Brothers game. Well, I guess Warner Brothers is holding on to Warner Brothers games. They're not looking to sell anytime.
Well,
soon
there was
'cause they're still
rumors.
attached to
There
Warner
was
Brothers.
rumors that it was going up for sale, right? Like,
Yeah.
because remember,
But
Warner
then
Brothers got.
Then they came out with multiverses, so they're not going to sell after developing their own multiverses game. You know.
Yeah. So I think remember they got Warner Brothers got merged / purchased by AT&T, and then so there was a whole thing of whether they were going to get rid of the games department, sell it off, but it looks like that's not happening anymore. At that time, I thought Microsoft was going to do that because it's funny because Microsoft in the past few years has really gobbled up a lot of stuff because at that time, with those rumors, Microsoft didn't have much. They didn't have a lot. Now they have like a good chunk of the large developers. But at that time, I remember it was like Microsoft needs to. Remember the whole thing was Microsoft has no exclusives. They have Halo and they have Gears of War, and that's it. You know, I mean they had the Forza series, but that really didn't really become.
It was mainly
big.
Halo and Gears of War.
Yeah.
You know.
Forza
just recently got super popular.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, it was a popular genre before the time, but Forza Horizon 5, that was next.
Yeah.
That was next level. Like bumped up the everyone I know that played the game had never played a Forza game before in their life. You know.
Look at me. Yep.
Yeah, I'd only played one before that, and it was a very different experience.
And Sony was the one that was killing it with the exclusives, and they still are. It's just now we got to see how everything stacks up. So yeah, I don't know. Anything else to say about this acquisition? It's big, but it's not. I think I guess the reverberations aren't quite as big as I thought they were going to be.
I mean, they could be big in the future, but I can tell you right now, for the next year, maybe even 2 years, it's not going to mean anything. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I just yeah. Like I said, this is a good move for Sony. Sony's making money from this move, but it's one of those things where all the benefits that Sony's going to get from this isn't something that we as the consumer will be able to see. You know what I mean? We won't be able to visually see it. Whereas the Microsoft Acti Blizzard deal, we will see the fruits of that labor very soon. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sony, they have been acquiring studios, and they said they're planning on acquiring more. The question is how this one obviously
is their sixth studio. This is their sixth studio since 2021. I could be wrong.
Yes,
But I
they
believe
bought
this is the
5 more.
sixth
They
acquisition.
bought House Marquee, Blue Point Games, Firesprite, Nixies, and Valkyrie, which are all great studios, but they're not like huge studios. You know, this is the first
pretty independent.
This is the first large purchase for them.
Does Sony own Santa Monica Studios?
Yeah.
I feel like they do.
They do.
Those games are only on Sony.
Yeah.
That's a great game studio, though. Like,
and then is it Sucker
always
Punch? Don't they own
knockouts.
Sucker Punch as well?
I think so. Yeah.
If they don't, they have some sort of deal with them because this kind of now the question is like now you have Google
Oh man.
Stadia, Amazon Luna, I think their service is called.
I mean, there's a couple studios that are still haven't been bought up yet. Or maybe they're not looking to get bought up, but like one that comes to mind is Deep Silver, which
Mm.
used to make. I mean, they still make okay games, but they're owned by Koch Media,
Hmm.
the Koch brothers, who destroy the planet. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about how evil they are. Yeah, Deep Silver, like that's a smaller company with quite a bit of IP. I'm surprised no one's nabbed them just yet.
Yeah, I mean, some of the big ones are I would think
Well,
unattainable.
they're a publisher.
Like, like no one's buying Valve. That's just way too big, way too much money.
Yeah, I mean Valve's not going to sell
Yeah, no.
anytime soon.
Well, they don't need
Especially
to.
because they
They,
don't need,
they,
not only do they not need to, but they produce like they create their own things, you know?
yeah,
Like they build the index, they're building numerous things. They now work on products as well
yeah.
as
Well, and they
software, you
make
know?
so much money from Steam, it doesn't matter. They don't need,
The Steam Deck's going to sell freaking well.
Yeah. Uh, Rockstar Games is pretty big with Take
And they just
Two.
acquired Zynga,
Yeah.
which I think that I mean yes that was to get into the mobile gaming scene, but I also
Hmm.
think that was more about acquisition of proprietary tools as well.
EA is
I know that definitely
huge.
played a role.
EA is huge. That would take a lot to get there.
I feel like Sony has to nab Ubisoft. It's a big company, but like they have to, man.
Yeah,
They
but
need they need more IP, and Ubisoft has some really good IP. Ubisoft does have ties to Microsoft, but
yeah.
their Ubisoft's tie to Microsoft is a much smaller tie than EA's tie to Microsoft.
Hmm.
You know, like I just if EA wants it to be bought, it would be by
Hmm.
Microsoft. Also, EA doesn't want to be bought because they make so much money from FIFA. Like literally
All
all
their
their other games could
sports.
be a dumpster fire, but EA like they make all their money in their sports games, but
Yeah.
specifically FIFA.
Yeah.
Dude, Dennis, they make like unimaginable amounts of money from the microtransactions in FIFA.
Mm.
Like not the base game, just the packs. Everyone trying to make their FIFA Ultimate Team. I mean,
Which
even
is
Jack, who's a friend of ours, I've seen him spend hundreds of dollars on that game.
which is crazy because that's a
It
not
is.
even a no. It's not even a free to play game. It's a
It's
you
not
had to pay for the game, so you're paying for the game and then paying for whatchamacallit,
the players. Well, I
microtransactions.
mean,
Yeah.
that is a different part of the game, but still, it's
No.
crazy. They make so
Yeah.
much money from that, so they
Yeah.
won't get sold.
Yeah.
Ubisoft, they've been doing really good with Assassin's Creed recently, but I don't know. It just seems like in terms of big acquisitions, I feel like they could get acquired.
Sega was being thrown around as a possible acquisition from both Microsoft and Sony.
Mm.
Um,
It
though
would make more sense for Nintendo to grab it though.
yes, their IP is more geared towards the Nintendo audience, I believe. With Sonic the Hedgehog, Phantasy Star, a lot of their more nostalgic stuff. Their Sega is not a. I hate to say it, it's not as hardcore of a gamer. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
Developer. It's
it's definitely
more
very casual,
casual and kind of the old nostalgic.
arcadey, you know.
Yeah. So like an acquisition by Sony or Microsoft really, I mean, sure it helps, but doesn't help them as much as, some of the other companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are just saying Sony and Square Enix is something that fits. Capcom isn't quite as
Yeah.
yeah.
Capcom has some really great IP though that could be like
Yes.
modernized and made like hardcore or
Yeah.
AAA if you will. Like Capcom's got some like stuff that could be amazing. They still have like some fresh IP as well. That could look if Sony can acquire Square Enix, that would be huge for them. The only thing is, from Square Enix's side, it's not huge for them. Like getting acquired by Sony would it doesn't help Square Enix. It doesn't really like hurt them, but it doesn't help them. So I don't see why they would. You know,
Yeah.
currently like they're making more money from having their games on all platforms. Um, Especially with Final Fantasy 14 selling so well that you can't buy it anymore. Well, I think they now put it back. I think you can now buy the game again, but for months you couldn't buy the game because there were too many players,
Yeah. It's
which is
funny.
crazy for an MMO game. They were like, no, we have too many players. Our servers are full. People are complaining. You can't buy the game anymore. We're not accepting new players at this time.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this list of like the top 50 video game design companies, and then I'm looking at them and like, aside from the big ones that we're talking about, a lot of them have already been bought.
Yeah.
Because I'm like looking at this list and they're like Double Fine. I'm like, okay, that's
I
Microsoft
love
bought
Double
them.
Fine.
Yeah, like,
Love Double
oh,
Fine. Great
Insomniac.
company.
That's Sony's. Infinity
Hmm.
Ward just got bought in the Activision Blizzard deal. You know.
Yeah.
ZeniMax. Oh no, Microsoft owns them. You know what I mean? Activision
Yeah.
Blizzard. That's Microsoft. Oh, Zynga just got bought by Take-Two. Like, yeah, Bethesda. Yeah, I'm looking at id. Double Fine. Rare is owned by Microsoft. You know, like,
Wait, who grabbed id? Who's got id?
whatchamacallit?
I'm assuming Microsoft.
Microsoft owns them because it's under the
Yeah.
ZeniMax deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, all right, because Doom, right? Of course.
Yeah. So I don't know. Okay, last thing before we go here, who do you think Sony will buy next, and who should they buy next?
That's a good question. I think they're gonna first. Here's the thing. Here's what they're gonna do. The next thing they're acquiring is probably gonna be something small, something that we may not have heard about too much. I think they're gonna be acquiring a lot of small studios. But if they were gonna acquire, well, here's the thing. What I think they should do is they should acquire a bigger company. They need a bigger deal than this previous deal. They need more IP. So what I would recommend is they should buy Square Enix. You know,
Mhm.
not that Square Enix is looking to sell, but hell, if you throw a company enough money
Yes.
and then they'll follow it. And also like they have very close ties together. You know what I mean? If it can be a thing where it's like our games become exclusive to Sony and PC, but not Xbox. Like I think Square Enix would be okay with not selling their stuff on the Xbox console as long as they can still sell their stuff on PC. You know what I
Well,
mean?
Sony seems to be opening up that route now. I do hope in the future that they start doing day one PC releases versus this wait 1 year, 2 year thing. Because, like I
Or at
mentioned
least make
before,
the wait smaller, man. Like we said, it's got to be. Well,
1
you
year.
said even 6 months doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean at the moment that's what it's like. You
Yeah.
know, ideally it'd be a year if we're lucky, but I mean for them to really like make money on these exclusives, I think it's got to be like you said, it's got to be day one on PC and on PlayStation. You know.
Yeah.
Either that or it's at least 6 months later. Because I understand you got to optimize a lot. Also, pirating on PC, pirating is so easy. So you will make more money by just like even back in the day when games were multi-platform,
Mhm.
the PC release would usually be a month after console release because of piracy. Just to be able to make because they know the minute it comes to PC, it's you can pirate the game. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to fight piracy on PC and hackers and stuff like that. So that's why people usually tend to wait off on their PC release anyways. Besides the fact that there's optimization involved, because your game isn't really optimized for PC, it's optimized for it was built for console, you know. But moving forward with future IP, hopefully Sony will develop them with PC in mind, so that it doesn't take a year or 2 years to optimize it. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Yeah, I think Square Enix is the play for Sony. I think that's
That's the biggest play that they can make. If they can do that play, that
because
would
you're
be huge for
locking
them.
down like the JRPG fans. Like that's you buy them. You have all that existing IP. You know, they're diehard Final Fantasy fans that just will only will always get whatever system has that. You know. Who knows? Maybe eventually he's just gonna be all the best place to go is the PC, right? Because you'll have all the X because you know Xbox doesn't have that thing where it's only on the Xbox console. It's like all of their games are on the PC. The notable exception, which I still don't understand, is Halo 5. I still don't quite understand why Halo 5 never made it to the PC, but that's.
I will say this though, Dennis. Sorry to reiterate. There are 3 companies that Sony has to buy, and I do mean they have to buy it. Well, one of those companies could get acquired by Nintendo as well. But besides Square, the number one I'm thinking is Square Enix. But if they grab Square Enix, if they want to corner the JRPG market, they need to get Bandai Namco as well.
Yeah.
But the issue there is Bandai Namco is also I believe a toy company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if there's like different divisions or if you can just specifically buy their gaming division. But yeah, Bandai Namco makes between Square Enix and Bandai Namco, that's like all the top Japanese RPGs right there. You know, and then Capcom.
Yeah.
Capcom would be the third company that I think they have to get.
Yeah, if you want to
But
corner
also, I
that
think
Japanese market.
yeah,
You want to corner
exactly.
the
I
Japanese
also
market.
think, yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
also think it would be a good acquisition for Nintendo though. Capcom.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those three. I mean, the thing about Nintendo is that their first party games are so beloved, and there's so many hardcore
They don't.
fans.
Yeah, they don't have to worry, man, at all.
They don't. I mean, they sell systems purely on just having Mario, just having Smash Brothers, just what I mean, having
It's true, man.
Zelda. Like
I bought a Switch just to play Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
Like I'd be lying. I got it to try Animal Crossing as well. Found out that is really not the game for me. I do not have the patience for that game. Like, gotta go check in with my villagers every day. It's like, anyways, that's a different tangent. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's the thing is like because the games are exclusive and because the games are on there. When you get a Nintendo Switch, you're gonna spend a bunch of money on the Nintendo Switch store that day to get other games. For your system. It's the same as the Oculus. You buy an Oculus, you're going to spend a bunch of money on the Oculus store,
Yeah. So, all right. Is there anything else you want to say about
that's
this?
Everything.
Cool. All right, guys.
I got some other news, but we'll save that for the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. All right, guys. That's it for now. Make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, youtube.com/Revog. We have our weekly podcast, which is on anchor.fm, that also distributes to Spotify. Also, you can follow me on Twitter @ThinkHero. Also on Instagram, Dennis.tzng. Josh, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on Twitch @It'sThespis. Should be a link in the description. You guys can find me in the Discord channel, our Revog Discord channel. If you guys ever want to have a chat about video games, it's the best place to find me.
Cool. All right. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Later.